You're listening to Linked AM. Tell your story on Linked Live and get noticed. You're listening to Carl Wolfenden on the Business Class Show and is not always affiliated with the guests and the topics discussed. Any financial statements are the opinions of the individual, and you should seek professional advice before making any decisions. Upgrade your listening to Business Class, the show that puts you in the big leather comfy seats. So sit back and enjoy our take on the trending business issues of the week.
Howdy, folks. Here he is, the Texas Brit, the guy with the stiff upper lip, filling his 10-gallon hat and his cowboy boots, Carl Wolfenden.
Good morning, and welcome to Linked AM. My goodness, I really like that name, Linked AM. I mean, there's a story behind it, and one day I'll tell you about it. A lot of my friends know the story about Linked AM, but it was all about linking conversations, and that's what we've been doing for 8 years now. My goodness, 8 years, and I'm only 9. So that's, I don't know, there's a little joke there, over the past, few weeks and months and a couple of years, you'll have seen this week, we just posted the interview that we had with Mike Bright, Professor Dr. Mike Bright from Grove City College over in Pennsylvania there, and had a great conversation about future of engineering, and it kind of all dovetails into the matrix of conversations that we've been having, and it all fits into that subject of the future of the workforce. And so, as you have listened and heard and watched my conversations with Michael Steiner over at Best Robotics, it's introduced me to a great universe of people that have got more knowledge than I have, and they sound a lot better than I do. So I thought I'd invite them on the show. And one of those people, of course, is a gentleman that I was introduced to by Michael, and he's called Finch Fulton. And he's actually the VP of Policy and Strategy over at a company called Locomation. And it's locomation.ai. So that gives you a little bit of a hint of what this is. But rather than me sort of explain it, I've got Finch in the studio, the virtual studio, as we now fondly call it. And so thanks for joining me this morning, Finch, and great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Oh yeah, and it's an interesting conversation. We've had a couple of off mic conversations, just sort of prepping for this particular segment. And what excites me, and as everybody knows, I'm a bit of a geek. I really like all the stuff that's happening around autonomous vehicles and how AI is really interacting with technology and engineering. We had that conversation with Dr. Bright, Mike Bright, who so at the end of the day, tell us more about what Locomation does, your company, and then we'll go into some more detail after that.
Yeah, well, so we have a slightly different model than some of our competitors, but big picture, we are an automated truck technology company. And so if you look at the world where we're going to have machines driving the trucks instead of people, there's a certain number of steps that are going to have to be taken to get there. And so we're unique in that as we work towards a fully autonomous truck, we're starting with a human-led two-truck linked convoy truck, which allows two human drivers to switch places, essentially. Human drivers are allowed to drive for 11 hours a day, which means for the majority of the day, a truck is sitting unused. And so you have these assets that are unutilized. You have humans that are in play. And now that the driver of a truck can be a human or a machine, you can start combining them into teams and getting the trucks to be able to work on the road a lot more. So you're increasing the capacity. All of the supply chain difficulties that our nation is facing can be addressed with this technology. and it increases pay for the truck drivers because they're generating twice as much revenue. So it takes care of a lot of problems all at once. Ultimately, we'll progress to a fully autonomous truck, but because we have a human in the loop, we're able to deploy today safely, legally, and routinely, commercially at scale across the United States. And so you're going to see a lot more of our trucks in the very near future before you see a lot more of our competitors' trucks.
Well, that's great. I mean, but I mean, at the end of the day, what I really liked about what you just said was you're combining human and technology. And the we've always talked about the Terminator sort of syndrome of where robots are going to take over, etc. But I've said that to Michael Steiner, of course, and who and work with as well. My concern about that. But at the end of the day, if we can actually have humans working in consort with technology, and there's those safety and those fail safes that are actually that work in harmony, isn't there?
Well, look, and there's a lot of things humans do very well. They're very good at contextualization. They're very good at seeing a new situation, like a plane landing on the road or lava erupting or any sort of crazy thing you can think of. A human can get that and understand it, whereas a machine might not be able to. On the flip side, humans get bored staring at a road for hours and hours and hours at a time, just looking back and forth, making sure no other crazy drivers on the road is going to run into your truck. That's a difficult thing for a human to do. So if you can start combining these systems, you can address the things that humans aren't as good at while still relying on the strengths of what humans are good at, and overall improve the safety of the truck operations, which is good because truck driving is the fourth most dangerous job in the country. And so ways you can improve safety make a big difference.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing I heard you say when you were going through your introduction there was about the supply chain problems that we're all seeing and getting goods to stores, etc. More and more people are buying things online and having to get things from A to B, or manufacturers need to get raw goods to the factories, etc. So it's if you can make that more efficient then and safer, then you've got as you say, a win-win situation.
Yeah. Well, and it's important because, like you said, the demand for freight, demand for shipment is going to go up by 22% in the next 20 years. We already have a shortage of 80,000 truck drivers, and the demand on the timing, the turnaround time is ramping up significantly because we had a decade's advancement in the people buying online and the expectations of how quickly they get their packages over the last 2 years as people learned how to work from home and how to order goods from home. So this has significant impacts on the supply chain that's already under duress, which we've seen in the last 6 months, 8 months. And so even if we hadn't had these recent tie-ups with the supply chain, we were going to need to do something about this. So this is just really highlighting the need to take action because the status quo won't continue to cut it.
Well, I'm hearing another thing there. It's about scalability. So as you start to think about the future, over the past few months, we've been focusing on how students are going through the education system, etc. The fact that we have to really start to focus in on STEAM, the science, technology, engineering, arts, is that STEAM part, and then the technology and math side of things. So corporations are having to think, well, how do we start to engage with these students and bring them into our workforce as such? But everyone thinks about tech jobs being that you have to be mathematically genius, which I'm not, but I still like technology. There's some roles where it's technology, companies that use technology still need folks and staff that are not PhDs. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
That's right. They need people like me too. At least that's my hope.
Yeah, right. You're analytical. Yeah, absolutely. You look at policy and the strategy, etc. So companies are starting to have to look at that, aren't they?
That's right. So, and if you just look at the company I work for, Locomation, so we've tripled in size over the last year, right? So we have about 100 people now. So we're not a massive company at this time. But we've tripled in size and we're going to double to triple again this next year. And so when you look at the hiring that's going to be needed for that, one, if you look at big picture numbers, right? In the US, there's 9.5 million Americans that are unemployed looking for work, and job openings are 9.2 million, which is a record high. So if you're looking at this, you're like, oh, well, surely they can just go get people, right? But as you're aware, work is becoming more knowledge intensive, even for those without a PhD. More and more jobs need people that have a good foundation in math and literacy, but also higher order skills like problem solving, teamwork, critical thinking. And a lot of these jobs also require digital fluency and more advanced technical skills. And if you look at the sort of students that are being produced today, there's a significant shortage of students that can do that. Right now, among college-bound high school students, which is a higher barrier than just high school students, only 20% of college-bound high school students are ready to take STEM classes in college. We're looking at, in STEM jobs, there's 3.5 million STEM jobs that need to be created by 2025, and more than 2 million of them are going to go unfilled. I mean, this is a significant problem that our country is facing. And it's because we're not providing enough opportunities, that too many Americans are locked out of the innovation sector. They're not getting the educations and skills. And we're not seeing that people are scared of the types of jobs that are there that they could achieve, right? Everyone assumes that they need a PhD or to understand robotics or be able to write software to be able to engage in these jobs. And that's just not the case. A lot in the past, we'd see a lot of people being introduced to these sort of jobs by things like machine shop or wood shop, or in high school they would have some of these real world spatial skills that you get for understanding how to build things and how to fix things. Those are sort of things that we need to get back to that, because those fundamentals are what are needed for these STEM jobs and these companies in this space, because not everybody has to have a robotics PhD to engage in the jobs of the future.
Well, yeah, and my next question was going to be, well, how do they actually go and get those skills? Where do those students find them? But I know you're involved also in Best Robotics,
That's right, yeah.
such. And what I love about that program, and I learned so much within that first segment, nearly over 18 months ago with Michael Steiner. I was introduced to him by one of the presidents of the education division of Texas Instruments, because of course they're involved in Best Robotics as well. And
helped start it, yeah.
That's how it all started. And I started listening, and it was supposed to be just one segment. Now it's become like a continuous thread of modules that I'm learning. But one thing that I learned was that these kids that come through the program, they learn to work as a team. They start to learn how the other elements of the whole project are not just about that one thing where, okay, I've just invented the best thing that's going to make the world a better place. It's all about the other things around it, the promotion, the video, the presentation of it, etc. And it's all about, don't have an ego, become a team player. And I think a lot of people are becoming, or have become, without that knowledge, very individualized. They think that I have to be the best on my own, and I have to perform well. I found that corporations now are not looking for that. They're looking for somebody a little bit more rounded that can work with somebody else and have that skill. So tell us from your perspective how a program like BEST actually integrates with what you just said.
Yeah, well, I mean, you said it. Students, at least in my opinion, and I think everybody more or less agrees, they don't learn best by sitting in a classroom and passively soaking up information and then being able to correctly answer a multiple choice test or anything like that. From the beginning, students are trying to make sense of the world. They want to ask questions, get information, and then figure out the answers, get new insights. And this is the same thing that you're asked to do as a professional. Kids start out doing this, but often they're forced back into the textbook, back into the classroom, back into the multiple choice test, and so they're stymied. But what we see is children at the top of their third grade math classes are much more likely to become inventors, but only if they come from a rich family. When you're talking about gifted, low-income minority students, they often go unrecognized in school systems that aren't equipped to identify talent, and instead they get caught up with the presumption that those jobs and that future in those jobs is not for them. And it's not just underrepresented racial and ethnic groups, which make up 27% of the population, but only 11% of the STEM workforce. It's women, who of course make up roughly half the population, but only 30% of the STEM workforce. So you have to provide those role models. You have to be able to lower the barriers to their learning ability. You have to get them introduced to the subject, and you're not asking them, as a third grader, fifth grader, eighth grader, to do it all at once. They can start out talking about something and being on the marketing side of a BEST team, and then gain more confidence and more understanding for how it works. And then as they spend more years in the program, they come back the next year, which they often do because they enjoy it so much. They can take on more of the engineering role and the planning roles and help decide the business model or the scoring model for the team. And so they start moving into these roles that sound like they're just part of winning the game, but these are roles that are very much mirrored in companies like Locomation. What's the business model? What are you actually trying to go after? How have you planned to make sure that all the pieces will be ready to do that? These are real skills that students need to have that they're not necessarily being trained in today, that companies like mine need and that BEST provides. And they're doing it in 17 states, 49 hubs, and serving over 20,000 students now and counting. But it's this project-based learning approach that really gives the skills to students that they need to take advantage of the opportunities that the U.S. is begging them to take advantage of.
So, my goodness, I love how you just framed it out. But do you think that, I mean, hey, my family were in the textile business, and so and we used to have apprenticeships, and people had come through an apprenticeship. They'd learn how to, how to do the job by have a mentor that goes alongside. I found out that that's what Texas Instruments actually does have. Their people come through. They learn the different types of departments, etc., and then they all gravitate to wherever they need to be. But it's kind of an apprenticeship. Is that the way it should? We've got to start looking to actually really home in on these skills and give people confidence.
Yes, I think you've got to establish, local and regional alliances for STEM opportunities. You've got to look at the schools around it. You can have your higher level schools like Carnegie Mellon that are producing those PhDs, but also your Johnstown University, your community colleges. I mean, there's different sort of good, high paying jobs that are needed. And we have to be developing that skilled technical workforce, which is anybody that uses science and engineering skills in their jobs, but don't even have a bachelor's degree. So it's that skills technical workforce that we need to address with apprenticeships, and to make sure that we're giving them a pathway and that they can see the pathway of opportunity to participate in these jobs. Because I think the biggest thing that stymies the ability to bring people into the workplace is they don't think it's jobs for them. They think it's for someone else. They haven't seen the representation of somebody like that taking their jobs, or they don't know somebody in their family or community that has those jobs. And so you have to break down those barriers, some of which are geographic, although those are hopefully being diminished with, the large scale transition to people being able to take on remote work. But you got to break down those barriers so that they can take advantage of them.
That's interesting you just said that, because if you think about the how it's evolved, work has evolved, a lot of people used to follow the footsteps of their father, their mother, or their family members, etc. And they saw that they had the network there because, of course, they were introduced to that, etc. But now, because the opportunity has become more widespread and people are going, oh, I'd like to do this over here. It's not what my family, my dad has done or whatever, but I want to go over this direction, but they don't know how to get there. And then that's the other thing of it's about connecting people that understand, how you can move somebody from an underprivileged area or underdeveloped area and move them to a sort of a skill set that they would never think they'd ever be in, such as technology and autonomous vehicles, etc. But how do you get there? And I think you've got to have programs that allow them to do that.
That's right. Yeah, BEST is a great example. Apprenticeships are a fantastic example. Any sort of opportunity, paid internships is a good example. Any sort of opportunity to get them exposed to that world. And then when people see they've got that sort of experience, they're much more likely to give them a chance in other roles.
So unfortunately, we're coming up to the end of our little segment here. We could talk forever, I think, and I think we will have you back on, because there's going to be stuff that, because I really want to learn more about locomation, so what you can tell us. What is the plans? I mean, it might be trade secrets, I don't know, but I always like to give the opportunity to say, look, how are you looking to grow, and how can people out there help you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have 2 actual customers, and we're the only autonomous trucking company that has actual customers. We've got at least one more announcement coming up very soon. But as we look at the sort of job opportunities that we're creating, we have our primary jobs that are jobs at Locomation, where you work with us. And we have the secondary jobs where companies like Wilson Logistics or PGT Trucking, they grow and they get more business. And because they're able to drive efficiencies out of the model, they're able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which we didn't even talk about, but you can reduce them by about 1/5 by incorporating our approach, which is something you can't do it any other way, absent electrification being viable for long haul. But you have carriers, and they'll grow, and they'll be able to provide, lower rates for shippers. They'll be able to get more profitability for themselves and increase pay for truckers. That'll generate more business for them, and you'll see those jobs grow. Then you have the tertiary jobs, the third degree jobs, where it's all the other parts and supplies and everything that goes into helping our customers and their chains. Those will continue to grow. And so we'll be able to see more and more jobs that we're going to need skilled technical workers to be taking hold of, or else it's going to hurt our growth and our limitation. So that's why we're looking at organizations like Best Robotics, because we need them to be successful for our country, or we're not going to be having the success that we need to have. So that focus on educating students is 100% selfish, right? It is because we need it.
And rightfully so. I mean, sure. Absolutely.
It's just nice when the things you need line up with what the country needs, and you can do good by doing good.
Well, you triggered something. I'm looking at that beautiful vehicle behind you. Okay. So there you go. I see it. Beautiful. So the engine, I think they call it the engine, the powertrain. Is that electric then, or is it a hybrid? Or you say about reducing the emissions down?
It's not yet electric.
Okay.
It's looking like, especially with all these investments, the Department of Energy has been investing hundreds of millions of dollars in the basic research that's needed to make long haul trucking batteries capable, right? Right. And they're hoping, estimates are that technology will be economically viable by the end of the decade. Now, of course, we see it for light duty vehicles or maybe package delivery vehicles, but when we're talking about a truck that needs to go 1,000 miles a day, much different limitations on what the technology is able to do today, much less if you have to swap it out when you get to a route, or if you're going to charge it, which takes a long time with a battery that has that capability, and so on. So there's a lot of basic challenges that need to be overcome before we can move to an electric future. But we do believe that's our future, and we are actively talking to partners about that. It's just probably more of a 2027, 2030 type thing versus a can do right now. And I know we're at time, but I can just say this is going to be a big focus for everyone, because roughly 1/4 of all greenhouse gas emissions comes from transportation. Roughly 1/4 of that comes from heavy duty trucking, even though it makes up 4% of the vehicles on the road. Until we get to electrification, if you can't bring in approaches like ours that can reduce it by 1/5, you're going to have a lot of trouble lowering your greenhouse gas footprint. And many shippers, think of like Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Walmart, you name it, their CEO's pay is now being tied to their ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation of their products. So we're seeing market forces and regulations coming together to force some technological solution like ours. It doesn't have to be ours, but there's not that many other ways you can do it in the near term before electrification or like a hydrogen fuel-based vehicle, something like that comes on board, which is not today. So
right.
It's both the public and private sector that are going to be driving these changes.
I think you just said tying the bonuses, etc., and the CSR reports that are sustainability for corporations, etc., because it's always been said in the past, is this just a greenwash? Are they just saying, are they just doing these things? Are they buying these carbon credits, etc.? But what are they doing? And I know
everybody's not going to be listening to this today, but I understand the SEC may be introducing a rule even today or maybe this week on clarifying how you report emissions reductions, because there's been so much greenwashing.
Yeah.
And I'll just say our report was done by an independent third party that's made to be auditable, so it can be ready for that sort of scrutiny.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's actually refreshing to hear that, you know, a supply chain company like yourself is actually driving that initiative as well, because it's got to, because as we've said, it can't happen overnight if not everybody gets involved, but somebody's got to spearhead it, and it sounds like Locomation, your company, is doing that. So I applaud you for that.
Again, it's nice when doing good actually does good.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, Finch, thank you so much. This has been a very, very informative conversation. And I know that I'm going to get lots of questions. So when I get the emails in, I'm going to be flooding your inbox as well with them. But
I'm at your service.
I would love to, get you back on, and we can talk about all the other things, that initiatives that you have. But as I say, thanks for joining me this morning. It's been fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Of course, that was Finch Fulton, and he is the VP of Policy and Strategy over at Locomation. And what a great company! What I like about, and Finch actually said that, he said that it actually makes a change where actually doing good actually makes a difference. And actually making a difference is actually doing something good. It works both ways. And so I'm always really thrilled to have guests on like Finch as well. So like I always say to you folks out there, go out there, have some fun, make some money, because of course we're in business. It's business class news. And so if you're not making money, then you'll be out of business, and then you won't be doing anything. And so, but anyway, as I say, go out there, have some fun, but always be safe and be responsible. So until the next time, goodbye.